In Moscow, under the ornate chandeliers of the Russian Foreign Ministry, a historic meeting unfolded that may reshape Afghanistan's path on the world stage. Afghanistan's Taliban Foreign Minister, Amir Muttaqi, sat across the long, polished table from Russia's veteran Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov. Cameras captured their firm handshake, a gesture laden with decades of history and geopolitical calculation.
Ситуация в регионе, но и в мире в целом, но мы говорим сейчас о нашем общем регионе, конечно, непростая.
This meeting marked a moment that was once unthinkable. Just a few years ago, the Taliban were internationally isolated, regarded almost universally as pariahs. But now, in October 2025, Russia has become the first country to formally recognize the Taliban government in Kabul, removing the movement from its list of banned terrorist organizations and inviting its leaders into the halls of official diplomacy. For the Taliban, it was not merely a symbolic step. It was a validation on the global stage. The Taliban's rise to power came abruptly in August 2021, following the chaotic withdrawal of US forces that had backed Afghanistan's internationally recognized government. As the last American troops left the tarmac of Kabul airport, the Islamist movement, once driven from power in 2001, swept back into the presidential palace. Since then, their rule has faced widespread criticism abroad for restrictions on women's rights, the curbing of civil liberties, and their hardline interpretation of Islamic law. Yet, as the conflict subsided, countries in the region faced a practical question: how to deal with the new rulers in Kabul. Moscow's decision has been building for some time. It had already accepted a Taliban-appointed chargé d'affaires back in 2022, signalling an incremental shift. In April 2025, Russia formally removed the Taliban from its list of terrorist organizations, a move that opened the door to greater engagement. The recognition was finally announced in July 2025, a bold step that distinguished Russia from much of the international community. The Moscow talks underscored this new phase of relations. Lavrov, in his calm but deliberate tone, acknowledged the changes unfolding in Afghanistan. "We can see that your government is working to stabilize the situation in the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan," he said, referring to the Taliban's official name for the country. He went on to note, "According to general assessments, there has been significant progress in the fight against the terrorist threat." And he added a third point that drew international attention. The relevant UN agencies also note a significant reduction in drug cultivation. These statements signaled Moscow's view that the Taliban's governance, though controversial, has brought a degree of order to a country long plagued by war, insurgency, and narcotics trafficking. It was a message not just to Kabul, but to the world. Russia sees the Taliban as a pragmatic partner, capable of enforcing stability within Afghanistan's borders. For Amir Muttaqi, the recognition was a breakthrough. Speaking with measured words in Moscow, he praised Russia's decisions. The recognition process, which began with the removal of the Islamic Emirate from the list of forbidden organizations and continued with the acceptance of our ambassador in Moscow, deserves high praise, he declared. He followed this by expressing optimism about the future. "I am convinced that your decision will have a significant impact on Afghanistan's integration into the international community, its economic development and political stability."
Видим, как ваше правительство добивается стабилизации обстановки.
و نهادهای مربوطه سازمان ملل متحد بر آن تاکید می‌کنند که در کشور
زل هر سولان دی پارلمان دی روسی فدراسیون دی دریم جولای هغه پریکړه زه پوهیږم چې تاسو د افغانستان سره د اړیکو په برخه کې د خپل لیوالتیا له مخې تاریخي کردار ولوباوه.
This sentiment reflects the Taliban's long-standing quest for legitimacy. For decades, they have fought as insurgents, alternately in power and on the run, condemned by many for their human rights record. Recognition by a major world power like Russia offers them a potential bridge out of isolation, at least in the eyes of some regional players. The broader strategic picture helps explain Moscow's moves. Russia has clear security concerns in Central Asia, where the spread of militant groups linked to Afghanistan has long been a worry. Stability in Afghanistan, even under the Taliban, could mean fewer cross-border threats to its allies in the Collective Security Treaty Organization and reduced opportunities for groups like ISIS-K to establish footholds. Furthermore, Russia sees economic potential in Afghanistan's geography. Already it has opened a business representative office in Kabul and has signalled interest in using Afghan territory as a transit hub for gas supplies heading to Southeast Asia. These projects align with Moscow's ambitions to expand its influence in the broader region, despite Western sanctions over other conflicts. Another layer to this story is the global power dynamic. In July 2024, Russian President Vladimir Putin referred to the Taliban as allies in the fight against terrorism, a phrase that would have been inconceivable 2 decades earlier when Moscow joined Washington in backing operations against them. Today, that rhetoric reflects not only shifting regional calculations, but also Moscow's determination to counter US influence in the region and to demonstrate its independence in foreign policy decisions. Yet Russia's recognition of the Taliban is not without controversy. Western governments, including the United States and members of the European Union, have maintained that formal recognition should depend on the Taliban meeting international demands on human rights, especially the rights of women and girls to education and employment, and on establishing an inclusive government. For these countries, Russia's move risks legitimizing a regime that has not significantly altered its restrictive policies. Human rights organizations warn that such recognition may embolden the Taliban to continue ruling without meaningful reforms. Inside Afghanistan, the picture remains complex. While the Taliban claim to have restored order after decades of conflict, many Afghans continue to face economic hardship, unemployment, and limited personal freedoms. International aid, a lifeline for millions, has been reduced since the Taliban takeover. Engagement with countries like Russia could provide avenues for trade and investment, but questions remain over whether this will translate into tangible benefits for ordinary Afghans or merely strengthen the Taliban's grip on power. For now, Moscow is focusing on pragmatic cooperation. It has invited Taliban officials to participate in regional forums and pledged to support infrastructure projects that could link Afghanistan more closely to Central Asian and Russian markets. Energy transit routes, railways, and counter-narcotics initiatives are at the forefront of these discussions. The significance of this Moscow meeting lies in its symbolic and strategic dimensions. It shows that, at least for some powers, the geopolitical reality of Taliban control in Kabul outweighs the desire to wait for political reforms. It also illustrates how shifting alliances and priorities, especially in the context of a multipolar world, can override old enmities.
Видим, как ваше правительство добивается стабилизации обстановки в Исламском Эмирате Афганистан. По общим оценкам, есть существенные подвижки позитивные в борьбе с террористической угрозой.
For the Taliban, being welcomed in Moscow's official meeting rooms rather than being shunned as outlaws is a public relations victory. It allows them to project an image of legitimacy to their domestic audience and to others who might be weighing whether to follow Russia's example. Still, the road ahead for Afghanistan's engagement with the world remains uncertain. Recognition by Russia is a significant milestone, but it does not guarantee the lifting of sanctions by other countries or the restoration of suspended aid programs. Kabul will still have to contend with international pressure over its internal policies, particularly on women's rights and inclusivity, if it seeks broader acceptance. In the halls of the Russian Foreign Ministry, as the delegations exchanged documents and posed for photographs, there was a sense of calculated optimism. The Afghan delegation viewed Russia's recognition as a turning point, a chance to break from years of diplomatic isolation. The Russians framed it as a step towards regional stability and a pragmatic response to the facts on the ground. What happens next will depend on whether this bilateral cooperation can deliver concrete improvements both in regional security and in the lives of Afghans. If it succeeds, it could prompt other countries in the region, perhaps even some further afield, to reconsider their own positions. If it fails, it may simply highlight the enduring challenges of integrating Afghanistan into a world order still shaped by concerns over extremism and human rights. As cameras clicked and reporters filed their dispatches, the moment in Moscow captured the intersection of diplomacy, pragmatism, and geopolitical rivalry. The handshake between Lavrov and Muttaqi was more than ceremonial. It symbolized a potential shift in the regional balance, one that may echo far beyond the ornate meeting rooms of the Russian capital.
И соответствующие структуры ООН отмечают также существенное сокращение посевов под наркотиками.
I am convinced that your decision will have a significant impact on Afghanistan's integration into the international community, its economic development and political stability.
زه ډاډه یم چې تاسو دا تصمیم په نړیواله ټولنه کې د افغانستان پر ادغام اقتصادي پرمختګ او سیاسي ثبات خاص تاثیر لري.